Hi, everybody. We are back here again. It's a little later here, later than I usually do them, but I always I don't really anticipate when I'm going to do them. Sometimes I do them really late, sometimes I do them early. It just depends.
Okay.
We have two guests on this episode, and they have a very dark subject matter that I've discussed in my own personal life and on here, which is mental health, but specifically suicide. It's a very controversial subject matter at times because a lot of people try to shy away from it because it's something that plagues people, but they don't. We acknowledge like it doesn't, especially the younger generation. Um, Mental health is really up these days. It's gotten worse since COVID, and I don't see it getting any better because of the times we're in. And so, I got a couple people on who want to talk about it. So, you guys want to introduce yourself? Tell a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, I can start. My name is Deborah. I go by Deborah Susan, which is my pen name for my autobiography that I wrote, Spots on a Leopard, EMDR, Saved My Life. I was 19 the second time that I decided to take my own life. And I was very serious. I was very angry when I woke up. And it wasn't until I had this EMDR therapy that I started having the real healing that allowed me to begin to talk and reach out to others regarding this subject. I'm a certified healthcare aide, and I'm also a suicide first aid responder, which so is Brian, my partner. And I am a teen suicide attempt survivor. And so we are coming from having been there. We stood on the threshold and we actually took the step.
Yeah.
Um, very, I'm trying to say that any parent who has lost a child to suicide never saw it coming. And what happens is people think, well, if we don't talk about it, then it won't be a problem, right? And that's definitely not the case with this subject. Parents need to take their child by the hand and talk to them about this and guide them through using our program. Now, our program talks to 8-year olds on up, and it explains the 5 stages of intellectual development to help a student understand how to make decisions and how to keep hopelessness away. Because hopelessness is what pushes a person at the very end to actually go ahead and take that step. It's hopelessness. And we've had a child psychologist confirm that that is absolutely the last domino to fall before a person actually makes the attempt.
Right.
So if a person or if a parent sits down with their child with our program, they have a tool, there's a workbook involved, and they have a tool that they can communicate with their child and help them to understand. You don't want them hearing about this from somebody else or out, in the news or find out that a friend did this. It's far better to get ahead of it and prepare them. Now, Brian, my partner, he is a more recent suicide survivor.
Can he introduce
And
himself
I was,
so we can, you know,
yes, I was hoping that he could do that and tell his story, please.
go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, well, Brian Wardale here. That is my name, my pen name, my nom de guerre, nom de plume. Yeah, so I am a more recent, my story is a little more recent. I attempted suicide on December 3rd, 2019. So before the pandemic. Uh, But what had happened was I had been living with my mother, helping look after her because she was so, I don't know, so crippled up with arthritis that there was a lot of stuff that she couldn't do for herself. She had relied on my dad for quite a bit, cooking, laundry, shopping, many things, just because it was hard for her to stand for any length of time or walk very far. So, I mean, when he had a stroke in 2015 and was so badly affected that he wasn't able to come home, I ended up taking over a lot of those roles, doing the shopping, the cooking, the laundry, taking care of a lot of those tasks so that, to look after mom. But in 2019, she was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. She had ovarian cancer in the past, had received treatment, had eventually the cancer went into remission. She was cancer free, but I guess in 2019 it came back with a vengeance, and she had been getting weaker and weaker and was diagnosed with an inoperable tumor. And she was just, by that point, she was too weak for any kind of treatment. And so it was just a matter of time. And that really threw me into a tailspin, because that had, looking after my mom had become my reason for being.
I'm assuming you were very close with them.
I was very close with my folks. And, also I have a lifelong struggle with anxiety and depression. So
Sure.
this wasn't a complete surprise that it, but that, so I had been very close with my folks, and looking after my mom had just taken over so much of my life that I didn't realize how, I don't know, would the term codependent apply, perhaps?
Possibly.
How much I needed to be needed. And so when she had to be admitted to the hospital and would be, was awaiting transfer to a hospice, and my entire world had been turned upside down. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And, my mood and my worldview kind of went up and down. There was times I felt very desperate, beg your pardon, very desperate, and other times that I felt like, I think maybe I'll be able to get through this. But then on December 3rd, I woke up feeling particularly negative and particularly miserable. My mother hadn't passed yet, but she was in the hospital, waiting for a spot in a hospice. So on December 3rd, 2019, I woke up feeling particularly miserable and feeling hopeless.
Right.
And within the span of 2 hours, I had sat there having coffee and a sandwich and just thinking about trying to imagine a future that I would want to be a part of. And I just couldn't. I saw, all I could see for myself is that I would end up being a burden on the people I love, and they would resent me for it. And it would be miserable for everyone. And so I made the decision that I was going to end my own life. And so I put on my shoes and jacket, and walked to, I hope this isn't too much detail for your listeners.
No, you're fine. I'm very honest about my suicide attempt, so please go ahead.
Thank you.
I appreciate the honesty. Honestly.
I don't mind sharing it, especially if it can help somebody else, or at least they feel like somebody understands.
Right. That's why I do it.
So excellent. I'm glad that you do. So I walked about 10 or 12 minutes or so to where I knew that there was a train bridge going over a major highway. But I didn't want to jump and land in the middle of the highway because I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to disturb other people. Really, what I wanted to do was disappear.
Right.
And so I figured, I knew that there was a very wide shoulder on either side of the road, so that I could fall and be off to the side of the road, and then figured that they would kind of come and clean me up, and that was it. So I walked there. It was by a store, and there was 3 people outside smoking and chatting. And I made sure to, I was kind of doing the Han Solo and Chewie thing from Star Wars, where it's like, avoid them, but don't look like you're trying to avoid them.
Right.
Because I was afraid that if they saw my face, if they looked into my eyes, they would figure out what I was planning on doing, and they would try to stop me, and I wouldn't be able to go through with it.
Right. It's like if you were in a store and you're going to steal something, like you just think like people automatically know that you're guilty.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And what I thought I was doing was the right thing. I was making a difficult decision that other people wouldn't agree with in the moment, but they would understand the necessity later. Right. So it's like, I need to focus. I need to steel my resolve to do this thing. And so I can't afford to have anything try to, break my, challenge my determination.
Sure.
And this is what I was thinking, intellectualizing in my head. So I just kind of, tried to be as casual as possible, go around them. And I went out to the edge of that train bridge, and then I stopped and I sent a text to one of my brothers, my next door neighbor with whom I was very close, and 2 of my friends. I just, kind of copied all of them and sent a text saying that, what I'm doing, I hope is for everybody. I know that it's going to be painful in the short term, but, I think in time you'll understand why it had to be done.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come out and say specifically I'm committing suicide. I'm just, but it's like, hey, when you'll understand in time why I did this. And then I walked out a little ways onto the bridge, climbed up on the side, looked down, figured, yeah, that's probably far enough, and kicked myself over the side. And really, that's kind of the last thing I remember until waking up in the hospital. Like, I think was told later that it was that night. Except for little glimpses, brief flashes of memory. That's really all I remember. But I woke up in the hospital, and what I found out later is I broke both femurs very badly, open fractures through the skin. I smushed my right arm pretty good. I broke all three bones in my right arm around the elbow. And I crushed my right foot. They tried to save it because it was damaged, so it created a hematoma.
Uh-huh.
And they were hoping the orthopedic surgeon did, some tricks to try to relieve the pressure, and hoping that it would heal up. But a number of days later, it's like, no, it's not. We need to either debride the dead tissue, or we need to amputate. We won't know till we get in there. And like, okay, I'll read up on. They figured it would be a below knee amputation if that occurred. And so I read up on. By this point, I was feeling quite a bit better. Sorry, I had jumped ahead, sort of in my process. But anyway, ended up leading to a through knee amputation. So right in the, from at the base of the femur, then through the knee. So I still have the base of my femur, but the fibula and tibia are gone. So yeah, I mean that's what occurred.
Did you? I mean,
I'm sorry.
No, you're good, brother. You're good. Obviously, once you started to come to and learn all these things that had been done, like, was there instant regret, or did you still feel like you made the right decision at that point in time?
It was kind of complicated. Now I had lost a lot of blood, and had numerous traumatic injuries. I hit my head. Beg your pardon. I hit my head too hard. I guess I hit my head on my knee, hard enough that it fractured my orbital bone too. So, I mean, I was in intensive care for 5 days, and really in and out of consciousness and lucidity, I suppose.
Right.
I remember at a certain point while I was in IC, when I was just starting, things were just starting to make more sense. Like, apparently I seemed lucid. I just don't remember very much. And there were many times that I was lying, in bed in the ICU, and I couldn't understand what was going on around me. And when people talked, it was just, almost like the Charlie Brown adults, just wah, 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 wah. Nothing made sense.
Yeah.
And then I started to worry, am I brain damaged? Is that why things are so confusing? And that really started to scare me. And so the next time a nurse came in, I asked her, please be honest with me. Am I brain damaged? And she said, oh, no, there's no indication of any brain damage. But, then why am I so confused all the time? Oh, well, it's just, blood loss and painkillers and trauma and all of that. No, you'll be fine.
You didn't have a concussion or a traumatic brain injury?
If I did, it was mild.
Okay.
Or maybe I didn't even.
Yeah.
If they but they weren't worried about anything serious at the very least.
Minus the amputation.
Not that they mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like in my head.
In your head.
My head's okay.
Right.
For the most part. I have a small wire mesh implant on my orbital floor because the fracture had been displaced, so they used this wire mesh implant to hold things together while it healed. Sometimes I look for the scar of where they did surgery, but it was the plastic surgery department that did that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But talking about, how did I feel in regret? Well,
sure.
It was sometime in the first little bit where I had a psychiatrist, the hospital psychiatrist, come and talk to me, and where she's like, hey, just, we think we know the answer, but, can you tell us how that happened? And that's when I kind of like, yeah, it was a suicide attempt. And we talked for a while, and then at the end she asked me, are you happy that you failed? And at that moment I told her yes.
It's a good way to put it.
But knowing that that's what she wanted to hear. Right. That wasn't necessarily how I felt. How I felt was kind of ambivalent, like, I don't know. Yes, no, I'm not really sure. I have, kind of both.
Well, you see people with failed attempts, like you hear these freak accidents where somebody will shoot themselves and they'll blow half their face off, but they're still alive. And so they have the regret that it didn't work because now they're even in worse shape than they were before the accident. And then there's the other part of it where it's like, man, why did I do this in the first place? And it's just like a conflicting thing. Like, I still don't want to be here, but I do. I just wish it wasn't the way it is currently. I wish it was the way before I attempted the suicide.
Right. And, I have thanked God more than once that I didn't like cave my face in or knock all my teeth out. I didn't have my, I didn't have my junk crushed.
Yeah. That's important to us guys.
Thing, like, well, yeah, I know that to women that may sound silly, but yeah, I mean, that's, I was so grateful for that came through okay. The only limb of mine that was undamaged is actually my left arm, but, at least that appendage was okay too.
Yeah. What form of okay, finish that, and then I want to know like how much mobility do you have? Because I know you're in a wheelchair, but I don't know if it's just because you're
okay. Yeah. Well, I suppose I'll just kind of finish.
Yeah, please go ahead.
To make a long story short, too late. It was a few days after. It was a few days after being moved out of the ICU just to the regular trauma ward and recovering, starting to be able to think more clearly. That, having my brothers, because I have two older brothers, and I was worried about them being really harsh and judgmental, and they weren't at all, because we've never been super close. I'm very different than both of them in different ways. They were very loving and supportive and non-judgmental. My friends were awesome, coming to visit me, telling me how much, because that was something my brain lied to me about me too, is that, in the long run, nobody's really going to miss me. The people are fond of me, but but that's it.
Right.
But I had friends coming and telling me what a difference I made in their lives. These instances that they remember and cherish, and I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, I guess I kind of remembered that, but I didn't realize that was such a big deal. Well, it was to them.
Right.
And that's when I just realized, oh, my brain, my depression has been lying to me so badly that it just about killed me.
Yeah.
And from that point on, my mind, Deborah, my mind, heard that scratchy sound.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, but my mindset changed completely. And it remains so to this day, that those dark, morbid thoughts that were with me every single day previously, it's totally different now.
Sure. It's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I did a video on this recently on TikTok. It's just, you don't realize how much of an effect you have on other people, especially when you're in such a hateful headspace and everything looks like it's just, your life is just upside down and you can't see it through a much clearer lens. And if there, whatever you believe in, if you believe in God or you believe in a heaven and you could look down on your funeral, look down on the rubble that you left behind, like you were saying, you weren't trying to hurt anybody else. You just wanted out of the life that, and to stop the pain. But we don't ever think about who finds us. We don't think about, when our pictures in the paper or posted somewhere online in an article and someone saw us, maybe they met us at the grocery store somewhere and they went, oh my God, he was such a nice person and that person's dead and now you impacted them. And maybe you see a young person that was also had a very similar life to you and now they took their life. And then of course, all the people that just love you in general, whether it's your animals, your kids, your mom and dad, your brother and sister, whatever, they're highly impacted by your death because it's not just a natural cause. It's not just, oh, I had cancer. It's, I took my own life. And so now everyone else has to pick up the pieces and go, how could I have helped? Or did I exacerbate the situation? Because everyone has regrets. And so, yeah, I'm happy that you went into that because there's so many people that have lost somebody to suicide and people that have come close to suicide, maybe even because someone else did it. And they have all these thoughts and you're lucky enough and the three of us are lucky enough to still be here, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And I wonder what they would say if they could redo it.
Yeah, well, and that's like I said, I didn't think that I was that important, that I was loved. And it was a real kind of slap in the face and wake up call. No, not slap in the face isn't quite right. It was, but it hit me like a slap in the face.
Right.
To realize how important I was to other people.
Sure.
Because I couldn't see it for myself. And yes, I was so focused on my own pain that I really did kind of de-emphasize the feelings of others. I just, the way, like I say, I intellectualized it as I'm doing them a favor, whether they realize it in the moment or not.
Right.
Really kind of making myself the hero of the story.
Sure.
Looking back on it, sometimes I just have to roll my eyes and laugh, but hey, at least I'm here to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, we always have these like envisions, like you see it in movies where like you kind of fantasize it, like you go outside and everybody's high-fiving you and all the girls are like, yeah, you're amazing. And then when you pan out to what your life really is, you're just sad home alone and your phone is dry. No one's texting or calling you and you're stuck with these thoughts. And if you could just talk to one person, if somebody can just make you smile, you could probably get this thought out of your head at that moment. But you're stuck and your demons are just literally climbing all over you and just punching you repeatedly until you just say, all right, I give.
Yeah. And I didn't realize how bad off I was to try to find help if I knew, if I had the knowledge at the time to recognize these warning signs in my own life.
Sure.
And I had reached out for help, then I'm sure things would have worked out quite differently.
Absolutely. So
that's what our program is supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to get to like your mobility, and then I want to get to Deborah and like a little bit of her story, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But I love where it's going.
Yeah, sorry, I took so much time.
No, you're good, buddy. I'm a very talkative person, so it's just different when there's two people on telling two different stories. I try to keep it to where people can know that there's two people on the phone. Well, three if you count me. So I want people to hear your story and hers without it like completely breaking into two sections. So
understood. And yes, I mean it's hard to be short and to the point when you're so fascinating like me.
You are very fascinating. I'm captivated. So please, I know you're being sarcastic, but it is a very fascinating story because you don't get a lot of people who tell their story of, hey, I tried to kill myself and I'm still here.
Yeah.
And then aren't ashamed of it and are willing to talk about it.
Yep.
So anyways, yeah. So
no, I'm not ashamed. I've made peace with it.
Good for you, my friend. Good for you. I'm happy you're still here.
Well, thank you, Timothy, and thank you for hosting me here.
Yeah, of course.
So you were asking about my mobility.
Sure.
I spend 99% of my time in a wheelchair. I should be doing more physically because I have a prosthetic leg and I am able to stand. I am able to walk a little bit. I go over to a friend's place and I'm able to climb a short flight of stairs and take a few steps, and then they bring the wheelchair up the stairs and put it behind me and I plunk myself down.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have some mobility in that respect. Most of my issues actually come from my left leg, the intact leg, because it was, I said that I had open fractures. Well, with both legs, some of the femur was actually missing.
Oh, wow.
And it was worse on the left side. There was an entire section in the middle, so the ends didn't meet. And what they had to do in that instance is because the tissue was so damaged too, they didn't want to immediately try to do a bone graft. What they did is they used some sort of bonding agent, artificial bonding agent, a cement, for lack of a better word, to hold the pieces in place, and then sewed everything up, let it heal, let the tissues heal, and then they needed to go back in, remove this cement, and put in bone graft. And of course, there's steel plate and pins. I have steel plate and pins in both legs and in my arm, holding my humerus together, and that had its own issues down the road. But so it wasn't. Yeah, it was about 2 months later. Yeah, in February, they looked at the left leg, and said, okay, yeah, that's healing up nicely. We should be able to get you in soon to do a bone graft on that. So I hadn't been weight bearing at all on that leg, for 2 months. And then they say, we'll have to do a surgery and bone graft it. Well, that ended up getting pushed back because of the pandemic. There was, because of usually in winter, because of the icy weather and everything, there had been something of a backlog already, because that was just February.
Sure.
So I finally got a surgery appointment in March, and then the pandemic came along, so that ended up getting pushed back because, of course, they had to work a lot slower to prevent, do all these extra, precautions against COVID. So it wasn't until the end of April, that I got the bone graft on that left leg. So I was off that leg for 5 months, almost 6, I guess, or 5, something like that. December, January, February, March, April, and then nearly May. So yeah, like 5 months. And I've had a lot of trouble getting strength back in that leg. Scar tissue around the joint prevents me from properly extending it and locking my knee.
Right.
So that the bones and the cartilage are supporting my weight instead of having to have my quads supporting my weight all the time.
Yeah.
I've done some work with that to get better range of motion and extension in that knee, but it's still far from perfect. So that leg tires very, very quickly walking or standing. So most of the time I'm in a wheelchair. It would get stronger if I did more with it, but just between you and me and your millions of listeners, I'm kind of lazy.
That's okay. We all get lazy at times.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a wheelchair accessible apartment, wheelchair accessible shower. So I roll in. I have a nice fold down bench that I sit on, and then I push my wheelchair back a little bit, pull the curtains shut. The apartment's great.
Okay, that's awesome. I want to get back to you in a little bit, but I want to just, if it's okay, I want to let Deborah tell a little bit of her flirtation with death, if you can.
Yes, my first attempt, I was only 12, and I just took a whole bottle of aspirin. I was very surprised when I woke up, and my dad was very angry because now I had to replace a whole bottle of aspirin. So that was the first attempt. And the second one, I was very serious. Like I said, I was very serious. I took everything. And they didn't know if I was going to wake up. They got me in and pumped my stomach, but a lot of the drugs that I swallowed had managed to get into my bloodstream. So they had no idea whether I'd wake up, and if I did, what kind of mental state I would have. And so when I did wake up, I was very angry, and I decided right then and there I was going to get out of there and go do it right. And I just had a really good doctor, and he had called. I was 19, so I was of age. I was in Pennsylvania at the time. And he called my parents. My mom wouldn't even come in. She refused. And so that was a big red flag for the doctor. And then when my dad came in and just, pretended he didn't understand what was wrong with me, making big saucer eyes saying, oh, my gosh, I don't know why she does this. I don't know. Anyway, I just started throwing things and freaking out. So the doctor got my dad out of there and then turned to me and said, you know what, Deborah? Some people should never be parents. And that's one of them right there. And that gave me validation for what I was seeing that was going on in my life, enough that I could stand up now and say, okay, I deserve to live.
Sure.
And I have a right to be here as anybody else. But then what had happened is I had thought about it so much that it became a habitual thought pattern in my brain. So this would come back, and every time it came back, it would be stronger, trying to get me to do this again and do it right this time. So then I spent years and years going to therapy, trying to fix that, until finally I found the EMDR, I was 62 at the time when I did my EMDR therapy. It took about 18 months, and it made all the difference, absolutely all the difference in my life. It was very healing. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And process works. Let's just put it that way. You have to be patient with it. You have to be willing to go through what it takes to do it, which is sometimes more difficult. But I used to say to my therapist, and this is why I wrote the book, Spots on a Leopard. I walked in one day and I said, "Are we trying to change spots on a leopard here? Like, this has been ingrained in me since I was a baby, like since I was an infant. Yeah. How are we going to change this?" And she said to me, "You know what? Those spots were never yours. Your parents put those spots on you, and we're going to remove them one at a time." And that just gave me such hope. And that's what I mean when we say survivors of hopelessness, because hopelessness is ultimately the predator that takes our lives, comes and convinces us that we're not worthy, that we're a burden, we have no value, we have no worth. It's hopelessness. And that's what we now, Brian and I, reach out to help others. We have a music video on our website, Survivors of Hopelessness. It's at the very bottom of the page, less than 3 minutes. And it talks to adults feeling depression and isolation. Our program, like I said earlier, talks to 8-year-olds on up. And I am begging parents, please, please teach your children about this. Because if your child would never consider such a thing, they are the best candidate to take the training and help someone else. They'll recognize it in a friend or a schoolmate. You know, the youngsters, they're buddies with each other. And your child could be the one that would save a life and spare a family the loss of something extremely precious. Yeah. Every parent, like I said, every parent that lost a child to suicide never saw it coming. They never saw it coming. So you got to get out in front of it. I can't stress that enough. Yeah. If I had had the information that we put in this program, and Brian agrees, at least he used to.
I still do.
Okay, good. If we had had that kind of information and that kind of perspective, we would have never considered suicide. We would have had a way to figure out where we were, where we want to go, and how to map out to get there. And that's what this program teaches. It's simplified. It's 1 hour. You know, and like I said, it speaks to 8-year-olds. So it's easy language, no big words, no $10 words.
Right. Well, that's something you and I talked about earlier off air before Brian got on the phone, you know, about how much the younger generation is affected by mental health and suicide because, you know, I'm 36 and even my generation didn't deal with it in the same way because when I went to school, there wasn't many mass shootings. There was no such thing as cyberbullying. You get bullied, it would happen in school or it happened on the playground somewhere. It wouldn't happen at home. Or everywhere you go. You know, there wasn't just this constant kids being molested in school and going through all sorts of abuse. I mean, it happened. Now it's exacerbated to the 10th power. And everything is just so much worse. And you look at the news and everything is just dark and dreary. And, you know, they have it so much harder than any of us had it. And my generation had it harder probably than yours, but nothing in comparison to what they have it right now. And then when COVID hit, you know, it was a time for us to really take time for ourselves and celebrate each other and our family and just spend the quality time with each other. And instead, domestic violence and mental health and child abuse and all that went up. And it's like
Yep.
now they talk about, especially in young girls now, like suicide is so high.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think people will think that there's some sort of moniker for it, or some sort of like there should be some sort of visualization of what we know a person should look like when they want to kill themselves. Like, well, that person's too pretty, or that person has something to live for, or whatever. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
man, famous people do it. I mean, honestly, it seems like every celebrity that dies now is suicide. Other than
Yeah.
like Betty White or someone like who got really old and just died. But so
Yeah.
many people
Yeah.
now, that's their way out. They don't do it anymore. So you can't go with looks, you can't go with financial status,
Right.
or health. There is no. I mean, you could come up with a percentage or whatever and poll people, but I never believe in that. I don't think
No.
there is one type of person. Mental health specifically affects every color, it affects both genders. It affects everything, no matter how religious or
Yeah.
So it's something that needs to be talked about more, because of, especially, we always talk about how, what our impact is on the kids. How is it going to affect the kids? Well, this is plaguing and running through kids. And if you're not more in their life and you're not trying to understand what they're going through, there is a possibility that you could lose one of them.
Yes.
And so, yeah, like I said, there's a ricochet effect. A kid does it, then
Yeah.
how does it affect everybody else? And obviously, the younger
Yeah.
they are, the more sad and tragic the story is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you
I
hit the nail
gotta-
on the head right there. Mm-hmm.
Go
I
ahead.
gotta say, I laughed, Timothy, when you're talking about not because you were saying that you can't,
Right.
there's no person. You can't look at a person and say whether they're more at risk of suicide than another. It's just, you said because they're too pretty, and it just, oh my goodness, when I finally started admitting to people in the hospital that I attempted suicide, so many nurses and healthcare aides, when I said, that I was injured in a suicide attempt, they would say, "Why? You're so handsome."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, okay, thanks, but, handsome people can get depressed too.
Sure. Yeah.
By the way, for your
Okay.
listeners, it's not like I'm all that handsome, but I don't know, maybe they're trying to say that to make me feel better, but
I'm not into men, but you have a handsome voice.
oh, well, thank you. Maybe that's it.
That's it. You
Maybe that's
got everybody with your voice.
You sound so handsome.
Yeah. Yeah. If they say you have a voice for radio, that means you're probably not handsome.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
yeah, that's right. As long as you don't have a face made for radio, then that's really bad.
Right. No, but I appreciate it, because it what you're saying, because sometimes we don't go too deep into this, and you should, because people really think that there's a specific type. It's like they'll say, like, well, COVID affected the weak or the elderly, and primarily it goes after this and that. And it's like, yeah, okay, some of that could be true, or people that are unhealthy or unfit or whatever. But like suicide, there is none. There is no particular category it fits in. It affects everybody. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter how well off you are in life. Doesn't matter how attractive or unattractive or whatever. And a lot of that is, in your mind, in your head anyway. And a lot of times there are people that are gorgeous, that you find the most beautiful people in the world, and you'll be like, that person killed themselves? Like, they're gorgeous. But when they look at themselves in the mirror, they look at the most hideous creature on the planet. So it doesn't matter what they look like on the outside to them. I mean, and so.
Yeah, it's a matter of how you feel, and maybe you think that's, you don't think that's important. I wasn't thinking about whether I was handsome or not when I, was envisioning my future and deciding whether I should, hold my hand in poker as I was thinking of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'm a white, cisgendered, heterosexual, middle-aged guy, So, I don't have the challenges that many people face, but it's you really don't know, as you say, Timothy. I appreciate your saying it.
Yeah. Again, doesn't matter where you come from. There is no such thing as privilege when it comes to mental health. You got it or you don't got it, and it doesn't matter what class you're in. It goes after the poor, the rich, and the middle class. It just plagues people, and for me, there's times, I don't know how you guys go through it, but there's times when I've had those thoughts. I look back and like even now, like I had a mental breakdown like a couple months ago, and I just for 10 seconds I thought about it, and I'm just like, my God, like how fucked up am I? Like, why? Because I have so much to live for. I have so many friends now. When I first attempted to try to kill myself, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have a job. I had my mom and my grandma. That was pretty much the only thing I felt like I had to live for. That was the only thing that was really keeping me going. But now it's like I have a job. I have a voice. I have, the podcast. I have platforms where I can go on other people's podcasts. I have advocacy. I have so much. And then I have a place of my own. I live on my own, and my cat, and I have all the shoes that I buy myself, and I do okay financially. So it's like there's so much for me to be alive for, and you don't really put it when you're in that low. You don't put it in the perspective of how many people would love your spot, how many people would love what you have, and then when you can do that, because it's like when I was able to come out of it. It's like the sky opened up, and it was all just dark and dreary. And then the sky opened up, and it was like, because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to do this and this and that. And then I looked at my life and I go, oh no, my job's fine. And my health it's not, it could be better, but we're alive. We're going to fight this, and so on and so on. And you realize just like when you're stuck in that kind of headspace, you're looking through this really narrow, like foggy lens, and everything just seems like, I said for me at that time, my lens, like I looked through the lens of my life, and it looked like everything was on fire. And then you pulled back when I got my medication and everything, and I started to feel better, and I looked at everything and was like, what the hell was I seeing? This is not what I just saw a month ago.
Yeah, these very distorted, even delusional thoughts.
Right.
Thankfully, my brain went blank.
I hear that.
Schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia. Okay.
Schizophrenia is not something that I suffer from. That's not a challenge I face. I can slightly, understand what it might be like, because, I was in a situation where I firmly believed things to be true when they weren't, and where my perception and my thinking was so incredibly skewed, and believe things without any evidence, that my whole situation that I described, seeing only, the worst outcomes in my future, and like, I'd be better off dead.
Right.
That wasn't based on critical thinking.
And either of you can answer this, or both of you, but like, were either of you like told, like, hey, like for you, like you fell, like did they tell you if you would have landed a half an inch this way, you would be gone, or if you took this amount of medication, you would be gone?
For me, they really did not know. And you have to understand, this was back in 1972.
Sure.
When I did that. I was 19 at the time, and that was 1972. So their ability to deal with the circumstances was not as up to date as it would be today, right? But they really didn't know. And I was really angry when I woke up.
I bet.
I was serious. They knew I was serious anyway.
Yeah.
But Brian, did they ever say to you that if you'd have landed a half inch over, has anyone ever mentioned that to you?
No, the doctors didn't, or nobody said anything like that. They said that I fell, they figured I fell approximately 10 meters, which would be like, 30 odd feet. And kind of, they figured that what must have happened is that I ended up landing on my knees because it was kind of there was a bit of a sloped hill leading up to the bridge. They landed on my knees, and sort of my butt crushed my one foot, but I landed on my knees hard enough to break the femurs. But no, they never said, "Oh boy, there was a rock like an inch from where your head hit," or anything like that. No.
Right.
Well, you died twice on the table, though. They had to bring you back
So
twice.
they tell me.
Yeah.
So I've been told.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like your situation, Deborah. It was really touch and go there for a bit. Yeah. There was a lot of surgeries that they didn't repair the broken bones in my right arm until days after I was moved out of ICU, because my situation was so delicate, just repairing my femurs. No, you know what? All this other stuff can wait.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm willing to bet from all the aftermath and everything that's happened to you, I'm sure you weren't far off from being successful, and that's not something you want to be successful at. But if you did as much damage as you did, I'm sure another foot or whatever, you could have been gone.
Well, certainly if I hadn't been found, and I guess that's an important detail, is that one of those people that were standing outside the store smoking that I mentioned.
Okay, yeah.
Apparently one of them saw me go over and called 911. Because what could have happened is if I had been there longer, I may have bled out.
Sure.
Because my fractures were so bad.
Right. I'm wondering how you
even... they did.
I'm wondering how you even... Sorry, go ahead, Deborah.
I often describe, for people who have never, ever experienced such a thing, or can't imagine how a person could possibly consider taking their own life, what I describe is, imagine that you have to go to the bathroom so bad, and there's so much pressure, and you're like desperate. It's all you can think about. All you can think about is dealing with that situation. There's no washroom in sight. There's no bushes. There's nowhere to go. That's what it's like when hopelessness is pushing for relief. And that's why a person will finally step forward and say, "That's it, I can't take this anymore."
Sure.
That's the pushing that hopelessness does.
You get to that
louder and louder and pushing harder and harder, and you cannot see, think, or hear anything else. It's all consuming, right, Brian?
Yeah, you get to the point where you'll do anything to
relief.
Make it stop. Yeah.
Yeah, for relief. Yeah.
Yeah, you almost get like desperate. You're just like, whatever will take away this noise, especially with like dealing with inner demons. Like they're screaming at you saying, just do it. And you're so over it that you're just like, whatever you want, just get out of my head, or just leave me alone, or whatever's going on in your life that you feel like you can't handle anymore. It's like, I can't do this without my parents or whatever. I'm alone. No one loves me. All right. I'm good. Let's just go overboard, or I'm going to take these pills, or in my case, fiddle with a gun. Like it's,
whoa.
Yeah, I got, just shortly, I'll tell quickly. It's more, so I got through the mental headspace of, I'm going to do this. I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. And I hate life. And I knew my mother had a gun. And as I went to pull back the safety, it had a lock on it. And that's the only reason I'm still here.
Wow.
So I didn't necessarily go to the hospital. Most people don't even know it happened. I went on, and when that clicked back and it just hit the lock, I went, shit. Okay, now what? And then I'm like,
Yeah.
then I had to sit there and think with it, like, how else can I do this? Like, do I want to cut myself? Like, no, I don't like needles. I don't really like sharp objects. I don't want to do that. Okay, so we're going to have to buy a gun. Oh, I don't have my own money. How am I going to do that? I'm only, whatever I was, 14 or whatever. Crap. And then eventually it got to the point where it was like, like you said, just being lazy. Like, I was just like, well, I don't really have the effort to want to do it, which in a way benefited me, obviously. But
Yes.
I'm like, oh, do I want to live? And then there was and then the kind of further down the road, it kept following me, and I still kept thinking about it. And I think I mentioned it on here before, but I remember being in a not a Lowe's. What is the other one? Home Depot. I was in a Home Depot with my mom, and she was buying something in like the plant section. She was buying like seeds and things, and my mind was just on fire. I'm just like, I don't want to do this. And I had this like inner monologue with myself, and I said, hey, do you want to live or do you want to die? Because at this point right now, I can't do this anymore. So if you want to die, let's go research how we can do this. Or if you're too chicken shit to do it, then let's find a way to live and make this the best life we can. And that's where I just kind of came to the realization of, and again, I still struggle, but I also thrive as well. And I still push through it. And I'm not suicidal at all, other than, I had a moment a couple months ago, but it lasted for 10 seconds. I have so much more to live for. But yeah, I really had to just literally have a full on argument with myself and say, if you want to live, let's live. If you don't, let's just do it now. No more talking, no more, bullshitting. We're just going to go home and find a way to do it, and we're done. And we don't have to deal with this crap anymore. And I was like, no, I don't really, like, that was when the other side of my brain went, all right, you got me. I don't really want to die. I just wanted to continue to play with the idea of it and continue to make you miserable. And it was like, yeah, okay. So stop lying to me. Like you said earlier, stop lying to me. Stop making me feel like I'm an awful person. I'm ugly and all these things. Let's find a way to live with whatever we got on our plate. We're just going to deal with it. We've been through worse, so let's do it.
You would see our music video at the bottom of our website, survivorsofhopelessness.com.
Okay, good.
I think you would appreciate the music video at the bottom. It's
I'll check it out.
It's less than 3 minutes, and I think it really, the fellow did such a good job that wrote the song.
Yeah.
And we put and we turned it into a video. We put in some images that go with the lyrics, and no, he did a really good job. So I recommend go see that. Go look at that. It's free. Just at the bottom of it's a landing page. It's called survivorsofhopelessness.com.
Awesome. Before we kind of get out of here, because I would like to do this again sometime, and hope we can keep in touch and support each other, be friends. But
yeah, you bet.
Yeah, awesome. But I know you guys have the things you want to talk about, but like, do you have any kind of, and you both can go, like, do you have any advice for those people right now who are really struggling with mortality and just being alive and wanting to check out of this world? Like, do you have any advice, regardless of, age or anything, just someone struggling?
Well, the first thing I say is go to our website, Survivors of Hopelessness. Look at the video, the music video at the bottom, and reach out to us. You can email us. There's a button at the bottom where you can go. It directs you to another site where there's email, and you can get in touch with us directly. There's also the bundle. We've bundled our program. It's the instructional video, which is an hour, and there's 3 workbooks that go with it in the bundle. There's an adult version, and then there's the 2 student copies. Or you can just get the video or just the book to start. See, just reach out for yourself and look at these. The program is about making decisions and seeing life in the bigger picture. That's what it's about, and it's excellent. If I'd have had that when I was in my teens, my whole life would look different even now. What about you, Brian? What do you think?
Well, absolutely. I think that um, if somebody is in like a suicidal, like if they're right approaching that edge or they think they might be, then certainly go get help, go talk to a crisis line, talk to a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, doctor, priest, uh, um, somebody, if you're right along that edge. But if it's not an emergency or urgent, uh, I mean, yes, our program is very helpful for perspective. There is something that we say that I was very, very pleased that harmonizes with the suicide intervention training that Deborah and I both went through, which is like when you find somebody who is suicidal, how can you try to talk them down? One of the things they teach is that once you've kind of talked and you've listened to somebody's story, the idea is that you try to make a plan to keep them safe for now. They don't have to commit to the next 50, 60, however many years of their life. It's just like, how can you be safe for now?
Right.
And something that Deborah and I say in our program, and this wouldn't apply just to suicide, it would apply to making any major decision, is wait one more day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, suicide is a snap, momentary decision.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was over the course of, like 2 and a bit hours, but it was still a decision made in one day.
Right.
Your situation where you had the gun, you were all set to go through with it. And then it was like, who wants to be a millionaire? The safety was on, and it was like, is that your final answer?
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't know, actually. So, yeah, I mean, that is important. Take time, gather information, don't make a rush decision, especially if it's, could be a fatal one.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we wrap up here, I'm going to ask this because you made it pretty known that you wanted this to come out around Christmas. Can you elaborate and kind of say why?
Well, the holidays at the end of the year are the hardest for people who find themselves isolated or lonely. They don't have a partner. They go to their family festivities, and it really is worse. You suffer more. It's even more lonely when you're in a crowd. And that's why we were hoping to get this out, between Christmas and New Year, if not before. It'd be lovely for it to come out on the 24th,
right,
and then again on the 27th, perhaps, so that people can just get grounded that this isn't forever. These holidays will pass, and we can get back to normal life again, after the 1st of January. So hang on, give it one more day and maybe another.
Sure.
That's what our song is entitled, actually. Okay. Wait one more day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and for those people you mentioned, those who face stress with the kind of the family and those people who don't have the family or the community to get together with in the holidays, boy, they can have some real struggles.
Yes.
Oh yeah. No, holidays are bad for a lot of people. I constantly go through my TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and I'm just looking around. I always message people, hey, you need a friend or whatever, because there's people that are just trying to make ends meet for their kids. They want to give them a good Christmas, or they just want to get through the holidays, because it's just a sad time for them, because the people they love most are gone, or they didn't have anybody, or it's just it's not fun. I'm very fortunate that I have a good mother and grandmother who help provide a good Christmas, as I try to for them as well. But I understand the holidays can be very lonely and depressing. And so being alone is not
stressful.
Fun. Yeah.
You bet.
Well, thank you so much, Timothy, for having us on and allowing us to share and reach out, because that's what we're all about now, Brian and I. That's what we do for a living now.
Oh, that's great.
And our program actually doubles as a fundraiser. So we give to charities, especially we give to Woods Homes here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where we live.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an organization that goes across Canada, and they work with students. They work with youngsters and families dealing with these very issues. So, so we are out there making it better. So whoever is hearing this, please join us. Make it better. Go to our website.
Yeah, please
Send us an email. Yeah.
Please do. Well, I appreciate you guys very much. Let's keep in touch, and I'll start putting the episode together here right after this. But I appreciate you guys coming on and being so blunt and honest and forthcoming, because this is a subject that isn't just going to go away. And if we just act like it will, it's just going to get worse. So we have to try to enlighten and hopefully help and inspire people to, talk and speak their mind. Because I talk to people just in my daily, whether it's at work or whatever, or on social media, and they're kind of befuddled by how honest I am with my life, where I talk about abuse, I talk about my disability with my vision and my mental health, and it's like, I couldn't do that. It's like, no, you can. You just got to get to a place where you can. I mean, it's hard. It took me a long time to get to this point, but I fought like hell to get here.
I will say that Brian has been the wind beneath my wings, because I lived with a lot of shame.
Sure.
Because of my severe abuse, when I was a child. So I lived with a lot of shame. And even now, like I had trepidation when I'm about to talk about it. I still do feel that. And Brian is so comfortable with it. He's so open, and that's just the kind of fellow he always was. And that did not get damaged when he took that fatal step. But yeah.
Right.
So I really appreciate he's my strength.
That's awesome. You got any last words, Brian, before we check out?
Power of strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
A 5'9" tower of power. That's me.
And handsome. Don't forget handsome.
And handsome. That's right. We can't forget that.
And I rarely say that about other men.
That's true. Same here, my friend. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you guys for coming on. This was really fun.
All right.
Well, I am very glad that you're doing this. I think it's important. It is important to talk about these things, because, some people think that not talking about them, will somehow diminish the problem. No, it makes it worse.
Mm-hmm. We have to call out hopelessness for what it is.
Right.
It's the villain. It's the predator. We've got to fight it. And we've got to do it as a group. We've got to join together and fight hopelessness. That's the point.
Yeah, man. Community.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, guys. We're going to check out of the sign out here, and we'll see y'all later.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
so much.
you.
See you guys.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. It's always a chore when you have 3 talkative people, and I am including myself. But that was cool. I like that. I know this is a very dark subject matter for everybody on this time of year, but I don't know. I think it's very important, because, like they said, the holidays is a rough time for so many of us. If you haven't listened to it, I put out an episode maybe less than a year ago of just me struggling on New Year's Eve, just really being overly depressed and just frustrated with life. But yeah, I know this was probably a dark one to get through, but I think you can tell all of us were pretty, we're pretty upbeat. It's a dark subject matter. So, and if you're out there and you hear this, or you know somebody who's really struggling, let them hear the episode. Or just pass them my way. They need a friend, someone to talk to. And if you need a friend, I'm here. My stomach's growling because I'm hungry. And sorry for the water fountain, Bullet's water fountain, but he comes first. Sorry. But anyway, guys, I hope you're doing well, and please hang in there. I know this is a rough time maybe for some of you out there, but just do what you can. Do your best, and we'll make it through together. That's all we can do. Just keep it pushing, keep fighting. As long as you have a little bit of hope, you can get through it. So I'll see y'all later. Thanks for your time, and I'm here if you need me. All right, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye. And I hit the wrong button. Darn it. Now that's the right button. Visually impaired problems, people. See y'all next week.